Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be doing a Battle for Azeroth tank comparison. In this video I'm going to be giving a pro-con analysis of each tank class, and then at the end I'm going to go through and basically rank the tanks. Now the criteria that I'm using for this is pretty much the five things: survivability, mobility, damage, fun, and ease of use. Now these criteria are basically my own personal opinions on things, so your opinions may differ, but this is what I'm using, and with that, let's jump right into it. Alright, we're going to start this alphabetically with the Death Knight. Now we're going to start off with the pros first, and I'm going to start with the fact that the Death Knights are pretty much king of self-heals. This has been the case historically, and it continues to be the case in Battle for Azeroth. Additionally, Death Knights have strong AoE damage. Their Blood Boil, Death and Decay, along with Heart Strike, hit very hard and do good damage. Another pro is that they have magic damage mitigation. This is something that definitely comes in handy that some classes don't have. Another pro for the Death Knight is the fact that they have a battle res. Gives them a little bit more utility, and if your healer dies, you can save a wipe by having a battle res. Lastly, they have fairly strong ad control. Death and Decay can generally keep things in. They can pull ads in if they're too far away or spread out. They have that also an ability to basically bring all the ads into one general area, which is very helpful. Now into the cons. The biggest con for the Battle for Azeroth Death Knight is they have slow resource regeneration. If you're trying to play too fast, if you're not keeping a good management of your runes, you're going to find yourself with no buttons to press. They don't really have a filler spell unless you count Blood Boil, but it's on 2 charges. Also, like I said before, you can find yourself without enough resources to cast a Death Strike, or no runes to cast any of your rune spending abilities. So that can kind of put you in a bad way. Finally, the mobility is not the greatest on a Death Knight. Now, it's not as bad as it was in Legion. They do now have 2 speed enhancing abilities. I believe one of them you can talent for, but they're not super fast, and they're not super long, and they have good enough cooldowns. Alright, next we're going to look at the Demon Hunter. Demon Hunters are a particularly powerful tank. They have self-heals pretty much on demand with Soul Cleave and various other talents you can talent for to help with healing. They have very high mobility, probably one of the best, maybe a close second to Warriors, if not as good as Warriors. They have lots of cooldowns to help with damage mitigation. You can choose between straight up physical damage mitigation or just general damage mitigation. It's a fast-paced spec, and you always have something to press. So that's going to do it for the pros. But the cons were a little bit more difficult for me. I couldn't really find a lot. The biggest con I found with Demon Hunters is that they're not really good at ad control. Soul Cleave is your AoE ability. It is kind of conal. You have to be facing the general area, and if your ads are spread out, they can be kind of hard to round up and keep contained. But that's going to do it for the Demon Hunter. Moving on to the Guardian Druid. Guardian Druids have multiple damage reduction abilities and self-heal abilities. They can have even more if you talent for them. One of the other good cons for a Guardian Druid is that they have multiple AoE abilities in the forms of Swipe and Thrash. And with those AoE abilities, they're good at controlling ads. They can keep the attention on them while also pulling in ads that may be further away by using Moonfire. Now, that's going to do it for the pros. For cons, Guardian Druids don't really have very good mobility. The only speed enhancing ability they have is their shout, their stampeding roar, but that's got a considerable cooldown, and it doesn't really last that long, and it's not something you're going to be using as much during a fight. They do have another ability, which is Skull Bash, but it's a little bit limited too in the fact that it can only be done from a 13-yard range, and it's got a 15-second cooldown, and it's more of an interrupt than a movement enhancing ability. Additionally, most abilities in the rotation have a cooldown, so you're going to be, there's plenty of abilities to press, but you're going to be finding yourself in a very slow and methodic rotation. Now, if that's something you like, great, but generally speaking, that makes the spec less fun to play. Moving on, we have the Brewmaster Monk. Now, as far as pros go, the Brewmaster Monk is a fast-paced spec. It is a energy-based class, but you don't have to really pull up resources to do stuff. There's always something for you to press, and the rotation moves along well. Additionally, it has lots of damage reduction cooldowns, and just the general mechanic of the class using stagger really makes it flow, I guess, a little bit easier if managed correctly. Now, on top of that, it has access to heals when needed. You have healing abilities in the form of Vivify, or you can use Expel Harm and the various, orbs that drop on the ground. I forget what they're called, but when they drop on the ground, you can run through them if you need to get heals, or you can use Expel Harm, which should be available to you pretty much whenever you need it. Now, as far as cons go, the way you mitigate your damage through the use of particular brews is kind of a complicated idea. You have brews that enhance the amount of damage that staggers, and you have ones that clear certain amounts of staggers damage. Now, this could be a difficult thing to manage, and if you're not really good at understanding when damage is going to be coming in or how much you have currently staggered, it could be disastrous. You could end up taking huge damage, not getting rid of damage like you're supposed to, and basically instead of just getting it all at once, you're getting it more and more over time, which could make you a drain on healer resources. For instance, Iron Skin Brew is basically allows you to stagger more damage for 6 seconds, whereas Purifying Brew allows you to basically get rid of 50% of your delayed damage with stagger. So it's a real management juggle to get these right. Addition to that, the Monk doesn't have very good ad control. You have to really talent a certain way to be able to keep them in, but even those talents don't really help out as much, and the AoE damage for it in general is not very strong. You've got one strong AoE damage ability, and it's on a cooldown, so you're going to be doing a lot of tab targeting and target switching, and it's going to be tough to keep aggro on large groups of ads. All right, next up we have the Paladin. The Protection Paladin it's what I like to call the king of the cooldowns, because it has a lot, including damage enhancement and damage reduction. Also, it has a good array of self-heals on demand. Well, mostly on demand. Additionally, you can talent it to a certain way to where you can help with group heals if you talent for your consecration to heal those that stand in it. Additionally, it has good support and utility abilities. It can clear a movement impairing effects. You can, it's not bop someone, I guess you call it bop still, give them a blessing of protection that keeps them from taking damage. You can talent that so they don't take magical damage. And you can do various other things, like you can do a blessing of sacrifice, which allows you to take damage that, like, say, your healer might be taking. Additionally, they're pretty good at ad control. You can keep consecrate up pretty regularly. Ads that are far away, you can interrupt and bring them to you with your crazy Avenger shield thing, and you're pretty good at keeping control of ads, which is definite pro for Paladin. Now, one of the biggest thing that is a con for Paladins is that if you go into this full bore and you just start pressing buttons and using all the abilities in your rotation, those have limited charges and they have a limited recharge time. You could find yourself just like the Death Knight with no buttons to press, and you could just be sitting there waiting for stuff to come off cooldown, which is definite loss and a detriment to your group. Additionally, if you're not doing that, if you're not going balls to the walls pressing all your buttons, you're going to find the rotation can be slow. You're going to be doing a more methodical approach very similarly like the Death Knight. Additionally, Paladins are mid to low mobility, I would say, because the only thing you have is your horse you can jump on and you can get short bursts of speed. I mean, you can pull adds to you relatively easy, not necessarily with as much ease as a Death Knight, so it doesn't help as much, but again, not a whole lot of mobility. And rounding out our tanks is the Protection Warrior. Protection Warrior is one of the most mobile specs, if not the second most mobile. It is the most mobile, and it has the ability to close the distance between enemies using Intercept. It has Heroic Leap, also to cover large distances with relatively low cooldown. So it is very mobile. Additionally, you have your choice of damage reductions. You can do straight up regular just physical damage mitigation using block. Additionally, you can use Ignore Pain again, which will just basically ignore a certain degree of the amount of incoming damage, whether it is magical or physical. Then, if you talent for it, you can have Bolster, which basically increases your armor and makes you take less damage. So you have your choice of abilities to mitigate damage, which is always good. Additionally, it is fast-paced because you always have something to press. You're either generating rage or spending rage, and if you can't generate or spend rage, you have Devastate as your filler spell, which is pretty good. Additionally, they have good cooldowns in the form of Last Stand, Shield Wall, Battle Shout, lots of stuff that can help you stay alive and survive. And then on top of that, if you talent it correctly, you can have on-demand rage generation using Demoralizing Shout, 40 rage when you need it on demand, which is really helpful. And additionally, this is just more anecdotal, but I found that generally speaking, warriors take less damage than other specs. So if I'm not using any of my damage mitigation abilities or anything, just sitting there taking the hits, warriors tend to take less damage. Maybe because they wear plate, maybe because they have a shield. Paladins have the same thing, but I've noticed that warriors, they just seem to take less damage. Now, so onto the cons of warrior. I would say that warriors have poor AoE damage. I don't really have a lot of abilities. You can talent for some to get more AoE, but generally speaking, AoE is not something they excel at. Additionally, because of that, they tend to have more difficult crowd control. Now, they can bound around and get around to places to kind of get people and do what they have. And they have a couple abilities, but it's not as good if they're spread out and they're not able to be interrupted or stuff is on cooldowns. It could be more difficult to keep adds together and managed. Now we're going to move on to the rankings, which is probably what all of you are here looking to see. And again, all of this is fairly subjective, but we're going to start off with the bottom, which is I'm going to place the Druid. As you can tell, the Druid's there for a variety of reasons, mainly just because it's slow, low mobility, not the most fun spec to play. That being said, you're not going to kill a Druid without much of a fight. I played all these specs, and pretty much any of them are viable. No one's going to be in there and struggle because they're not able to survive, they're not able to take hits, they're not able to taunt, whatever. Druids are still a very viable tank, but I would put them on the bottom tier, mainly because they're not as fun to play. Now, next on the list is going to be the Monk. Now, I put the Monk here because this is for people who are of average tanking skill. If you're more of an advanced skill type of player and you know how to manage things better, the Monk will rank higher for you. But for your average person, Monk is going to be in the lower tier of tanks, simply because it's difficult to manage and there's a low margin for error. Moving on, I would go with the Death Knight at number 4. Now, the Death Knight has strong healing, but right now at its current state, maybe it's with haste or regen, if it's very slow, and if you don't do things right, or if you try and speed through, or you're trying to kill something too fast and not managing your resources well, you're going to find yourself with nothing to do. You'll have no buttons to press, you can't generate runes, you'll have nothing to do. Now, there's some things that can kind of mitigate this to a certain extent, but you can run those out too, and you can find yourself in the middle of an encounter not able to do anything but maybe taunt, and that is just not fun. Next up on the list, I would say, is the Paladin. Now, Paladin's skills are pretty average. There's not anything really special about them. They do kind of lack mobility, but they do have heals, and they do have certain things that they can do well, but I would say they're kind of mediocre. I'll note at the end here a special point to make about the Paladin where I think they would shine, but I will come back to that in just a bit. Now, moving on, if you are that higher skilled player and you do have, good management of not just only resources, but seeing your incoming damage, knowing encounters, this is where I would place the monk. The monk, if you can master those things, I would rank the monk around number 3. Now, the top 2 were pretty difficult for me, and I thought the order was different until I did a little bit more testing today. And so with that, I'm going to say number 2 is going to be the Protection Warrior. Now, Protection Warrior has the mobility, it has the damage reduction, it has the just general ability to take a beating and keep on going. And for that, that's why I would say it is definitely the number 2. So that being said, that leaves the final slot for the Demon Hunter. I went through and did a dungeon today to test out the Demon Hunter because I'd liked the Demon Hunter in Legion when it came out. I leveled it. It was my second tune that I leveled. But people did not like it because it was pretty squishy. It was, in the beginning of Legion, it was not, everyone was playing them and no one was playing them well. And people would see that you had a Demon Hunter and they would leave the dungeon. I quit playing my Demon Hunter before the second raid came out, and I haven't touched him since. That is probably going to change when Battle for Azeroth comes out. Demon Hunters have mobility, they have survivability, they have on-demand heals for the most part when they need them. They have a wide variety of damage mitigation tools at their hand, and they're fun to play. You have something to do all the time. That's why I would rank them number 1. Now, back to what I was saying about the Holy Paladin, or not the Holy Paladin, but the Paladin. Paladins, I think, would excel in an off-tank role in a raid. Now, I say this because when you have situations where you're going to have a large group of melee stacked together, the extra healing that a Paladin can bring to the table, the extra abilities that a Paladin can bring, like as far as mitigating damage to other players, the ability to have significant spot heals if needed. If they're not taking the main damage, but say the main tank is, Light of the Protector can come in real handy, especially if your healer's low and the boss is about to go down. I think an off-tank role is a role where a Paladin will shine far more than any other class in an off-tank type of role. Okay, that's going to do it for this video. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, all those fun things. If you disagree with my order, tell me what order you think they would be in. If you think you have something to add to the conversation, or maybe you think there's something I missed out on, let me know. I am always open to hearing other sides of conversations. If you have any critiques for me, if you think I didn't consider something, or if you think I put too much credence into one particular aspect, let me know. With that, I will see you all next time.